IVM.
Welcome to the most listened to South Asian radio station on the planet. Rukus Avenue Radio.
Hello, people of the world. This is Amit Doshi from IVM Podcast. We are India's premier podcast network. We're so happy to be on Rukus Avenue Radio and hope to have you join us every week at this time where we're going to bring you some of the best segments from our shows. And we hope that you tune in on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts from. This week, Cyrus was in conversation with popular playback singer Shilpa Rao. She talks about her musical background, a mixed bag that her personal playlist is, and also plays the piano for us. Tune in.
And now let us introduce our lovely guest, Shilpa Rao. Silvery and Rishi will play corresponding music because let me tell you, above everything else, these elite westernized Indian men who I work with are most impressed about the Grammy nomination. She's Grammy nominated. Shilpa, they told us 30 times she's Grammy nominated. So it's like that chop is unbelievable. And there's so many other things that you've done, so many award-winning songs, so many awards, classically trained. I mean, you've crossed the India-Pakistan divide and there's so many blockbuster hits. And all they come up with is Grammy nominated. It's amazing. I love that. It's the leftover of the Raj. We need that influence, otherwise it's pointless. Shilpa, welcome to the show. I talk a lot, as I tell all my guests. So please, at any point you walk out, just get up and leave.
No, but I really love you, Cyrus. I do. Forever.
Okay.
I do.
All right. Don't give me so much love. I'm scared. Really? Is that love?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that's basically a third world filmmaker. Trying to look through the lens. Can I start with the background? You've got this lovely piano. It just classes up everything. No? If somebody has a piano in the house, you suddenly sound like a really sophisticated, classy person. I mean, for a non-piano person to see, it's almost like intimidating. Wo kya hai? Piano.
Yeah. So my brother is the pianist, and like I told you before, he's the better musician in the house. And so he started to learn piano when he was 5. And when we first got it, like this is a grand, but we used to have a upright. And my dad's friend took. This is a grand, but
the big opening grand one, the big one.
Yeah, the top and everything. So, but the first one which we got, that was an upright. And my dad's friends used to come home and ask us, "Iska plug point kidhar hai?" Or "Iska sound box speaker aaspas hai?" Like you could have bought a house with it instead of this, and you could have bought an elephant.
I find Indian men who aren't musically trained like your family is would probably use that to put the drinks on. They'll be like, this is a perfect height. Wherever there's been a piano, I've noticed that men find that height perfect for keeping their drinks while drinking on. And they just lean on it like it's just a perfect piece of furniture for that.
Yeah, Indian films have actually made that, like this guy sitting and playing and then this woman standing there with a drink and, it's a very...
Unbelievable.
Suddenly you feel more classy. You hold the glass like that and all of that.
Yeah. I know. But okay, I won't waste time with the piano. I know there's so much to talk about.
No.
Listen, Shilpa, I've got more than 40 points. Now, each point is interesting on its own.
Okay.
But hamare paas sirf, I think, 40 odd minutes hai. And out of that only, we've got to do question answers, get you to sing for half an hour for free. And then, market it on our own podcast sites and make money without sharing it with you. We've got plans. This is a very vicious circle. But we'll start at the beginning. Before we come to Grammy nominated, Silvery will join us halfway and he'll tell you how much it means to him. Not that it's a small thing. It's a huge thing, by the way. I mean, you're the one nominated. You hail from a family of musicians and embarked on a musical journey through Bollywood. The funny thing is that generally Indian classical trained, I don't know if this is the right thing to ask also because it's a complex issue as me.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're Indian classical music trained, or even Western classical for the matter, you thumb your nose at Bollywood a little bit. I would think, you're trained in a certain way where you look at culture from a slightly, higher level and you don't think perhaps that pop culture is okay comparatively because from childhood you've been trained in Indian classical music, which is for a discerning ear, sophisticated ear, etc., etc.
Right. So obviously, my father was very strict when we were growing up, and I was learning Hindustani classical music. Anurag, my brother, was learning Western classical music. So we had like Amir Khan Saab and Bach and Beethoven happening in the same house.
I'll just explain. Bach is Johann Sebastian Bach, Silvery. He's Punjabi. He's not a dog making sounds because now he's already wondering ki kahan hai Putani, and he's looking in the background. All right. So the confluence was happening of West and East.
Bach is the father of the piano, actually, the harpsichord. Yeah, he made it. So we grew up with that, and my father was very strict. We weren't allowed to listen to any other form of music because.
What are you saying? Really?
Yeah, he was like, you're learning this. You need to be focusing on this because if you listen to something else, it just all of that. So, but
it sounds like Beethoven's dad. Beethoven's dad was very strict, apparently. Huh?
Yeah, even Mozart's dad.
No, Mozart's dad was very cool. We are a Mozart family, so all the Mozart stories I know.
Okay. So then my father was that way. And obviously, when you start listening to other forms of music in school, because I wasn't in a convent school and we used to have a lot of choir practices and I was doing harmony. So it was sort of a departure from the training at home.
You were cheating on the family tradition behind their back in the halls of education.
I was having the cake and eating it as well. So I was doing that. But it was really fun to listen to different forms of music, which I still do. I have a very open mind with the music.
But that's amazing, no? When you come from a very strong background where you're trained to where music is a real art form, which you have to learn. You don't just turn up with talent or without. And then you go to school and you have it's more like a fun bit of music. There's no pressure, there's no intellectualizing and all that. And that you were able to enjoy that without looking down on it.
No, in fact, I think the biggest love for me in my life is actually listening to good music more than singing it. So I think if you leave me, I would sit for hours listening to music, trying to listen to new music. If I find something, I will look for it, and I enjoy doing that. And even when my friends gather, we have a session of playing one song, so everyone gets one chance to play one song. You get to.
It's called Antakshari, Shilpa.
No, you play the song. I mean, on the Bluetooth speaker, you play the song of your liking and something that you discovered. Yeah, and I still love to find new music, watch concerts. I love. So
Shilpa Rao herself. Sorry, Shilpa Rao herself doesn't have a perfect favorite genre. No. It's not like Hindustani classical is there and then everything else. You can switch from one to the other like this.
Yes, my phone is a mixed bag. The music on my
what
phone
about your brother? Does he also have the same thing, or is he a little?
He's also the same way because we're quite similar in terms of. We chat about a certain concept of music and why someone did this and how this art form came into being. So we like to discuss.
Also, you obviously got growing up the school and college peers influence. You can't escape that.
Yes.
And you don't want to look like a.
Of course not. In fact, school and college, everyone must go not for the education, but to build relationships, to be able to have friends, to be able to have a human interaction with the people, to be able to. I think that's the best part about going to school and college.
I think you're so right. That's why canteen is more important than class. I've been screaming about this since the first time I got on the blacklist in St. Xavier College many years ago. Shilpa, I'm going to ask you a stupid question. I had a colleague called Anurag Rao in MTV for 15 years. Good drinking buddy of mine. He played bass guitar in a band, so he's quite musically gifted. All these Brahmins from the south, some of the other managed to play 10 instruments. But he can't be your brother, right?
No.
Okay, fair enough. Because he didn't play piano as far as I can remember. I just want to clarify this because he also has 2 molestation charges on Jet Airways, which is now no longer there. So I think the legal cases have also disappeared. I was part of that, as in I was trying to pull him off. But it's another story, not for this podcast. Okay, so I find this very fascinating about you already, that you train, not just the fact that you train Hindustani classical, but the background in the family is very sophisticated music learning. And I can totally relate to your father saying, why? Don't corrupt the ear almost, in a fact. It's almost like maybe that's the thinking, and the fact that then you were able to not have a complex or reverse complex when it comes to all this different musical genre, which is really where you made your name slowly. So let's now go back to more than 20 songs under your belt as a seasoned artist. All the different Hindi songs. How did it start? So how do you go from traditional Hindustani classical, where perhaps you'll be doing those concerts, to suddenly going towards the Bollywood side? How did that happen?
So, frankly speaking, many people ask me, still people who want to sing for films, that what's the learning to this? How do you sing for a film? How do you become a Bollywood singer? I don't know.
Father ka influence normally. Yeah, but go on.
No, I absolutely have no idea. Basically, all the things that I have learned, I always say that I am a product of all the things that I have learned, all the music that I have learned, all the music I have heard actually. And then when the song is presented to me, I just express it in the way I would. So that's all I've done, and thankfully all the musicians that I've worked with have let me be
But they
myself, and they've not tried to change my voice.
When they ask you to do Bollywood songs, they don't ask you ki Lata Didi ki jaise or Asha Didi ki jaise. They don't try to tell you to sing like an old icon from the past.
Well, my mom was actually someone who introduced me to Begum Akhtarji when I was growing up, and she had a bloody fantastic voice, a voice of her own.
You wanted to use worse language, but you stopped yourself. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean
worse language in a praising way. Yeah.
She was like a boss lady, and my mother was a huge fan of hers, and I started hearing her, and so that sort of opened a window towards a lot of female artists of that era, not just Indian, even abroad. If you're talking about Ella Fitzgerald or Edith Piaf or
Edith Piaf, you're my generation.
I love her.
Begum Akhtar is also quite old actually. Huh.
Yes, she is. And I would listen to Farida Khanum ji, I would listen to Iqbal Banu ji, and all of these women had such amazing individual voices, and I said, yeah, I should have
I think all that you mentioned, they're also also very powerful singers.
Yes.
Almost each one that you mentioned. As in, they
overtake
the room.
They're not just musicians. They had an ideology of their own. They had a belief system. They stood forward for change. For change. Like, for example, Iqbal Banu was told not to wear a sari in the Ziaul Haq emergency days, and she sat Hum Dekhenge in a sari. And yeah.
After being told not to?
Yes.
So you're a bit of a rebel, Shilpa? Is that what you're hinting at?
No, I would stand for things that I believe. It's not about being a rebel. It's about being, you know what, the right word is love. If you believe in love, if you feel that love is the only one way that people can be together, and there could be any semblance of peace amongst each other, please stand for it.
I think I know what you're saying. I think I know. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me. But I think what you're saying is also that the belief of being a true artist, the belief of who they are and what they are is also in confluence with the art. So what they stand for and the singing.
That should be. Otherwise, it becomes entertainment. There's a difference between art and entertainment. So.
Yeah, fair enough. But I'm not saying maybe that's the way it should be. But there are plenty who don't do that. Plenty of those whose hands get twisted and whatever, and do whatever they have to do to survive. But that's good to know. So Shilpa, I will be with you at the next farmers' agitation or whichever crusade you take up. Not farmers' agitation. Government doesn't like that. Be careful. No, but you're not telling us that one thing. So how did this segue happen? See, we know that you're classically trained, and we know that you yourself are flexible, but you come from a background which is perhaps not. So how did you get into Bollywood, which it's almost like marrying outside the community in the 70s and 80s, where nobody will accept all that kind of thing. So how did that first step happen? Now, obviously, it's all okay.
Well, so used to have this cassette player and a CD player at home, and Dad used to sometimes on a Sunday, how are these CDs increasing? I'm like, no, Dad, it's the same. So you used to get these pocket money, and you used to go and buy a CD of Sting or Sade or Eagles or Led Zepp, because my brother
God,
was...
what a wide variety from Begum Akhtar and Iqbal Banu to Led Zepp and Eagles, which is actually country.
Led Zepp is the shit. How can you not listen to Led Zepp? It's an institution. It's amazing.
You are perhaps the most flexible music lover I've ever met in my life. Unbelievable, really, that you're so secular in music. Yeah.
No, Led Zepp is one of my favorites. In fact, my brother was having this Linkin Park phase, and I wanted to get him out of it, so I gave him Led Zepp. So, this is okay. I think
you took him out of Linkin Park by converting him to Led Zepp. Wow.
Yes, I did that because I couldn't take that music, so I gave him Led Zepp. Come on, you have to hear these people. So, yeah, I mean, I'm very, in school, we used to have these, times where we could exchange music. So, someone's getting a cassette and this, that. So, wo sab chalta tha. apart from your comics and whatever. But then, yeah, that was a great time to actually sit down and have a listening session and have thoughts about it. And then you found out about Hotel California and what it actually means and what it stands for. And
isn't it about drugs?
Yeah, so you can get out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
Oh God, my producer Silvery is jumping for some reason. It's a topic very close to his heart. See, I don't know why, but when he comes on, we'll find out.
You can catch the full episode on the IVM app, website, YouTube, and across all audio platforms. Remember, Cyrus Says goes live on YouTube every morning at 10 a.m. Indian Standard Time. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, IVM Podcast as well. It's time for a break and we'll be right back.
2020 is a difficult year. A global pandemic, protests, elections, recessions. You get the picture. What we need is a space where we can have nuanced discussions about global affairs and foreign policy. That's where I come in. My name is Hamsini Hariharan and I host the States of Anarchy podcast. Every second Tuesday, I speak to experts in the field of international relations to make a little more sense of the world. So join me on the IVM podcast app, website, or wherever you're listening to me right now. IVM.
Hello and welcome back after the break. Talking about the Indian film industry, Siddharth Bhatia was joined by actress and director Pooja Bhatt on The Wire Talks. She spoke about the show Bombay Begums that recently released on Netflix in which she plays the lead. They also discussed the controversy around the show and had a general conversation about women in Indian cinema.
Rani, the character you play, is a CEO of a bank, a woman at the top of her profession, but functioning, really speaking, in a man's world. I mean, the viewer, I sense that the suits on your bank's board are terribly patronizing.
Yeah.
Even somewhat suspicious and skeptical of your skill. Is this a common experience in the corporate sector, you think? Or did you speak to any CEOs?
Well, I mean, you don't have to look very far from the film industry. When I started producing at 25, I made a film called Tamanna that dealt with female infanticide. And I was told that you have no business being a producer. You have youth on your side, just continue to act. What is this production nonsense? And that kind of was like, fuel to me. And I did Dushman then with Kajol. It kind of won her an award. It won Tanuja Chandra, who I launched as a director, an award. I did Zakham. I won my second national award. They said, okay, she's making movies, but wo art film banati hai. And then I made a film called Jisim that just kind of smashed all the box office records in that sense. And then they kind of said, okay, now she's here to stay, but still very patronizing in the sense of, oh, you're very emotional, or you take things too personally, or you're too passionate. This kind of constant assault on your femininity in that sense, where you're written off as being overtly emotional, or you're looked upon as somebody who's possibly having a bad day because you might be PMSing. These are realities. It doesn't happen with the crew, but it happens with the people who are finally giving you the money, and they're finally kind of, controlling your destiny in that sense. And unfortunately, half of them are not even filmmakers. They're just people with a lot of money who then would like to believe they're filmmakers. They have no idea what the reality is on the ground. And they kind of plan the future by maps written for the past. So I think that what Bombay Begums has taught me, and especially with the audience's reaction to it, is that the world has changed, of course, thanks to the internet and COVID. And the audience wants people to speak a different language to them. The film industry needs to catch up with that, because we're still kind of, talking in a language that's a little outdated. Our ideas of what women should have and should not have and how they should behave need to be kind of overhauled in many ways. And I think that the fact that it would take you so long earlier to get one film of yours released and get to every corner of this country, which is massive. And now you have a show that's out on Netflix and it's in 190 countries in a matter of an hour. So it's just a tectonic shift in that sense. And I think that Bombay Begums talks to the future. Arth was a film that my father made in 1983. That spoke to the future. And he was told by the film industry then that what kind of an ending is this? Shabana Azmi walks away from the lover also. If she's not with her husband, at least she should be with the lover. I'm not sure that people are very comfortable to see women walking on their own feet in films, on screen or off screen.
Basically, I remember seeing Arth then, and my recall is that it did phenomenally well, because again, there are people starved for good stories. And since then has become a cult film in some senses. It's always referred to, etc.
Absolutely.
And Bombay Begums ahead of its time. I'll come to the OTT, Netflix and OTT platforms a little later. I just wanted to ask you, when you were reading the script, when you were filming the show, what did you think of the portrayal of the other female characters? Because while we may praise the intent, there has been some criticism that some of the things are a bit over the top and maybe even a bit preachy. What did you think?
Well, I didn't think so. I think that, at the end of the day, a body of work, I think the responsibility is not to be real. The responsibility is to be true. And I think Bombay Begums is true in that sense because it is Alankrita's vision. It is the way she looks at the world. She had imagined Rani many, many years ago. She knew why Lily is why she is what she is. She knew why Fatima does what she does. She knew why Aisha is what she is. And while it might be completely untrue for certain women, it's completely true to others. So my point is, who decides the narrative? The idea is, what is empowerment? Empowerment is being able to sing your own song. Now, you can't dictate to me what the pitch and the tone and tenor of that song needs to be. There are many women within every woman. And in Bombay Begums, you might identify with a trait of Rani's. You might not identify with a trait of hers. You might identify with a trait of Aisha's. You might not identify with something of Fatima's. So I think that's really where it is. And I think that at the end of the day, you can't make everybody happy no matter what you do. So I think that...
Sorry, may I?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just on that point, I was thinking that the 13-year-old who, experiments with casual sex, sniffs coke, this is a society which is forever in denial. And many of these young kids are in their room at this very moment in people's homes. And everyone pretends it's not my child and says bad influence. And, that leads to all kinds of problems because you don't want to take them for counseling. And it's a spiral. You don't want to talk about it. It goes downhill. So identifying with this character is troubling for the average viewer and family, isn't it?
I traveled the length and breadth of this country with that film, trying to get tax exemption so it could release at that point in a theater with ease. There were no multiplexes those days. I actually met a minister who told me that, what are you talking about female infanticide? वो हमारे देश में होता नहीं है. वो तो चीन में होता है. And I was so disheartened. I said, here I am at the age of 25. I put my own money into a film, which is a true story, which deals with this issue. And I have a minister telling me, hey, hota nahi hai. But then I realized that for every one person who lives in denial, there are 5 more who don't live in denial. So as far as Shai's character is concerned, she does not indulge in any iota of sex, casual or otherwise. She's somebody who is going through a tremendous amount of upheaval in that sense because her body is undergoing changes. She's curious about sex. She's feeling the first pangs of love and attraction. She can't wait for her period to arrive because in her head, she thinks it's some sign of growing up and it might make her more attractive to the opposite sex. Yes, she goes to a party with extremely self-low esteem where she dresses up like something that she's completely not because she sees some silly influencer saying that, women should look a certain way or wear a certain thing. And she goes there. She gets completely rejected by the boy who she has got this kind of crush on. And she does the most foolish thing in the world. She goes out there and tries to, drown her sorrow, or rather kind of just blot it out by trying to appear cool and experimenting with drugs. And then what is the consequence of that action? She almost dies of an overdose. Now, if that is not indication that drugs are not cool, and if you're going to experiment wildly with drugs, you might end up dead, then I really don't know what is. It's not like she snorts a line of meow meow or cocaine or whatever she's supposed to be doing at that party and breaks into a song, or she suddenly develops some superpower where she's flying through the air, where we are saying, oh, it's cool to have drugs because then, you know what, you can actually dance like Alia Bhatt, or you can actually fly through the air like Wonder Woman. The girl ends up in a toilet almost dead. The first line of mine in the scene after is me screeching at that boy's father and saying, what the hell were drugs doing at a 14-year-old's party to begin with? And then he answers with the most heartbreaking truth, which is, we were not there. And that is something that most parents in this country need to face up to, that they are not there when their kids need some sort of direction. They are not there when their kids are confused and have questions about puberty or about loss or about love or about painful things. They relegate their children to nannies. They relegate their children to drivers. They want to look away from truth by kind of planting iPads and fancy phones in there and designer clothes in their hands, because they just don't want to face up to the fact that their kids are growing up, or they possibly don't have the time or the inclination to. And then there are those kids who are on the streets of any city in this country, those young little rag pickers who are heroin addicts. But does society care about them? They don't, because they are invisible, because they don't matter, right? So my point is that I read the most horrifying story of just after New Year's Eve in Bandra, where I live. At a young teenage party, a girl got killed by her supposed boyfriend and her best friend. And they were all under the influence of alcohol or some sort of substance. Now, are you telling me that this is not happening? Are you telling me that a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old has not experimented with any sort of drug? The world has changed. You know, when I was 13, it was a really big deal to kind of try to drink vodka and orange juice. That was the ultimate that you could think of. Now a child will laugh at you in your face. I mean, have they spoken to the average 13-year-old or 14-year-old? There was a book I came across called Stoned, Shamed and Depressed. I mean, Bombay Begums does not even scrape the tip of the iceberg. The youth, majority of it, especially in well-heeled circles, is pretty lost within their own homes. And that is an uncomfortable truth.
You can catch the full episode on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from. Do check that out. And on Storytellers and Storytellers this week, Vineet Kanabar invited Mantra Mugdh for a chat. Mantra is a leading name in the world of fiction podcasting in India with a blockbuster show, Bhaskar Bose. He shares the experience of a decade of RJing and successfully making the switch to podcasting and acting, and what he sees as the future of storytelling and podcasting in India.
This is Storytellers and Storytellers live on tape. You're listening to me, Vineet Kanabar, on the IVM Podcast Network. Today, I am very excited to bring you a guest who, I really want to call him the Amitabh Bachchan of podcasts, but I don't want to do that because that phrase is just so overused, but he is kind of the Amitabh Bachchan of fiction podcasts. Please join me in welcoming Mantra Mugdh on the show. Mantra, great to have you here. I'll introduce you in a second, but really, really fantastic to have you here. I've been looking for fiction podcasts in this country, and then I found the MM universe of podcasts, and I'm so glad you've made time to talk to us here. Welcome to the show, Mantra.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद विनीत जी, आपने आज यहाँ पर मुझे जिस तरीके से स्वागत किया है मेरा, मैं आप किस दिल से आपका धन्यवाद करूं. Thanks, Vineet. That's absolutely the most amazing compliment that it could ever be. I mean, who doesn't love Amitabh Bachchan? And we've had the privilege of having Amitabh Bachchan on one of our series also, and it's been absolutely fantastic to work with people who really enjoy this medium too. And thank you, Vineet, for inviting me on your podcast. I've been following your work, and it's like I said before we even began this recording, that I'm glad that you put up a platform where people who've been really working on behalf of their passion are being showcased. Thanks, Vineet. Thank you.
It's so kind of you to say that. And that's exactly what it is, right? I think the place we're in with podcasting, it is a project of passion, a labor of love, whatever sort of three-word phrase you want to call it. But I'm so glad to have you here. I have lots of questions for you as a podcaster, as an actor now with your role in High, as someone who's successfully transitioned from radio and RJing into now sort of a preeminent position in podcasting. Let's get started right there, right? Why don't you tell us about how that has been for you, right? You've been in radio for, I'm going to say 14, 15 years about?
Around 20 now, Vineet, because we started off in the...
Wow.
Yeah, it's almost been 2 decades, man. It's surprising that the first ever private FM radio station in India was launched on 4th of October 2001 in Indore, which is my hometown. And, the first private FM station like Radio Mirchi Indore or Radio City Bangalore, they started off almost simultaneously. And it's been 20 years. I just realized it myself. And I was jamming with a few friends of mine who were the True Bloods, the first batch of radio. And I said, we've gone old, friends. It's been, I mean, come on. At one point of time when we started off, Vineet, I was a hotelier before that. And
Right.
when I was about to enter the radio industry, my mother said the same thing. Ye radio kya hai? What is this? Kaun si radio ki baat kar rahe ho? Because in those days, all there was All India Radio.
Right.
And All India Radio bhi, it limited, उसमें ही था, rural sectors में ज़्यादा था, urban में उतना शायद नहीं चलता था. लेकिन that we are at the same position today. Imagine people are saying, my mom saying, "Ab ye podcast kya hai?"
Full circle.
I mean, how to explain this to your moms, Vineet?
I have tried and I have been a little bit successful, but I'm with you there. It's a full circle. It's a brand new medium. It's not really a brand new medium. Again, it's been around for 15, 16 years, but it's having its moment right now. And I'm glad that people like you are at the forefront of this, right? Let me dial back the years a little bit. And I'm not going to say that you're old. I'm going to say you're aging like fine wine with the kind of work that's coming forward. But let's dial back the years a little bit. And in a nutshell, if you can tell us about your journey with radio. I know you've won multiple awards. You've worked at Mirchi, City, the other biggies as well. How was that experience and how did that really bring you to podcasting? I know it's 20 years in maybe 3 minutes, but if you can give us a brief tour.
Yeah, radio has been my true love, Vineet. I love the medium. I love the audio medium tremendously. I can say this after all these years when I've worked with almost all the other mediums, may it be stage, may it be cinema, may it be television. After working in all the mediums, I realized that audio or radio as a medium or as a genre has always enticed me, always encouraged me to make more stuff because I believe it's a blind man's television. It's I keep using this phrase. Hindi mein kehte hain netrahin ka chalchitra hai ye, Vineet. And you let your listener make your own films, make your own visuals inside their head. I mean, like they also say that mind is a excellent servant but a terrible master. And you give the mind a couple of words and the mind will do the rest. So I always use this tricks with my friends. Vinny, don't think of a pink elephant. Don't think of a pink elephant. Don't think of a pink elephant with a little rat sitting on its head. Maybe having a cornetto ice cream or something like that.
The power of suggestion right there.
Power of suggestions, and here you go, man. You thought of a pink elephant who, I mean, generally don't even exist. So unless it's holy. Okay, sorry, it's a bad one.
Or unless it's Vishal Bharadwaj's Matru Ki Bijli Ka Mandola.
Oh, yes, man. I love Vishal Bharadwaj and his world, man.
It's just beautiful. That way. But dialing this back, where was your first brush with podcasts? I mean, clearly you've spent so much time in audio. You've used the medium to its fullest potential. You've transitioned into on-screen work as well. But where was your first brush with podcasts? Where did you realize what this medium could be, what the power of the storytelling here could be for you?
If you're specifically asking about podcasts and not radio, then it's a different answer altogether. Because yes, you're right. The podcasts have they've been around for much longer than we Indians know it. Because हमारे यहाँ unfortunately सारी की सारी चीजें 10-20 साल बाद ही आती हैं. ये क्या problem है इस दुनिया का मुझे समझ में नहीं आता. That things that are launched technologically wise, entertainment wise, or anything वो वहाँ पर पहले होता है और उसके 10, 12, 15 साल बाद यहाँ पर आता है. So podcast को हिंदुस्तान में आने में थोड़ा सा वक्त लगा. But as you clearly know that even late 90s, early 2000s में ही वेस्ट में पॉडकास्ट का ट्रेंड चालू हो चुका था. एंड जहां तक कि मेरा जॉनर है विच इज ऑडियो फिक्शन, एज स्पेसिफिकली यू मेंशन्ड इट, मेरे लिए बीबीसी के रेडियो ड्रामास या ऑल इंडिया रेडियो के जो ड्रामास होते थे, हवा महल नाम का एक नाटक आया करता था. इफ यू आस्क योर फोक्स दे विल टेल यू दैट एट वन पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम हवा महल के लिए अपॉइंटमेंट लिसनरशिप हुआ करती थी. Families would get together at a certain time, finish their household chores and sit in front of their radio set. It's not even a TV jisko dekhna hai. Right. They would sit in front of the radio set and listen to that half an hour program. And it was an experience, just like it's an experience to go to a cinema hall and watch things on a 70 that's the same way it happened. So for me also, it happened through that. I used to be as a young student researcher sort of a thing. मुझे बड़ा मजा आता था. मैं थिएटर से बहुत ज्यादा जुड़ा हुआ था. तो हमारे पास में ऑल इंडिया रेडियो का स्टूडियो हुआ करता था. एंड मैं किसी पहचान के थ्रू वहां जाया करता था. महीने में एक बार युवा वाणी नाम का एक प्रोग्राम होता था. वो होस्ट किया करते थे मेरे मित्र. तो मैं उनके साथ जाता था. I saw recording studios. I saw Folly Studios, Vineet Folly Studios, which were as big as a football ground.
Do check out the entire episode and many other interesting stories of interesting people on the IVM app, website, and across all audio platforms. It's time to take a break, but don't go anywhere. We have more great stuff on the other side.
Feeling overwhelmed, anxious, struggling with too many obstacles, don't know where your life is headed? Well, if you are dealing with one or all of these, tune into the Positively Unlimited podcast, because in each episode, I share a life lesson, a life hack, a pro tip that can help you get your life back on track. All episodes are available on the IVM website, IVM Podcast app, or wherever it is that you get your podcast from.
Rukus Avenue Radio.
And we're back. The world has been held captive by coronavirus for quite some time now. And here in India, there's a second wave, which is way higher and much more destructive than the last one. While most cities have night curfews, Mumbai has stricter rules and is in a partial lockdown. Our Bombay girls Rytasha and Ayushi had an early morning recording on the second day of the lockdown. So tired of the lockdown were they that this episode was dedicated to fantasizing about life after COVID. Listen to them on Agla Station Adulthood as they share their post-COVID wish list and hope all this subsides soon.
So I put out a poll on my Instagram. All of these lovely responses that we've had, most of these responses are travel. Okay, go on a vacation, get a decent job. So I'm guessing this year has been tough on the job sphere also for a lot of people.
It has, because a lot of people people got cut last year.
Legit, yeah.
Offices and businesses, especially small businesses who can't carry that weight, have had to shed some of their fat. And unfortunately, sometimes you're the fat.
Yeah.
No, it's a reality of life. We've all faced some sort of rejection in our life, man. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's part of who you are.
Absolutely.
That sucks.
So that's one big real, a lot of people, I think, are experiencing this. Reach out to other people online. Maybe there's some kind of, you're not alone. That's for sure. Like, if you're going through this, you're not alone.
Yeah. What we could do is we could really bring in someone like a hiring specialist. I have a friend who does this, who helps people craft even LinkedIn messages and stuff like that. I think this is an idea for another show.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay. So a lot of travel, go for a vacation. It's almost been 2 years. Have a better job. Attend offline lectures. Yeah.
Sweet.
Students, I'm like, a lot of these responses, I understand. Everyone is exhausted, tech-exhausted.
Yeah, imagine Serena finished law school online. She's finishing law school next month online. She's so sad. Anyway, continue.
And we had this, we chatted about this, and someone has said, watching people's faces as we travel, conversations with random folks you meet without fear.
Yes.
We need to, the fear that's crept into our society at large. Fear of many things existed. Now there's fear of COVID, fear of people, fear of spaces and places.
And fear of proximity. Like, there was something so beautiful about, in a safe way, safety first.
I am happy that I am more than happy when we need to understand as Indians to like maintain thoda distance. मतलब आप एकदम ही line में मेरे गाँव में घुस रहे हो, मत करो. Literally.
That is happening now also, because I was standing in line to get something at the chemist, and this guy behind me is just like, he's breathing on my neck. I can feel it.
Like, you cannot behave like this.
And then you become that really annoying, sharp, snappy person. You're like, piche khade raho, 6 foot ka distance rakho. Like, I don't like being that person. Yeah, but then...
I hate being that person. Aapne mask kyun nahi pehna? Dur khade raho.
Man, you're behaving like a leech.
Like a leech.
And that's coming from someone who has 100% experienced real leeches. Let me tell you, that's a story for another time. But it was a camp, and I rolled up my legs at my pants, and there were many leeches.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a DS camp.
Yeah. You say these words, our listeners don't know, Ayushi. You either give context or you don't drop names like this.
Okay, DEAS or IAYP, which was a Duke of Edinburgh scheme that, like, I think Christian schools adopted. Like, it was a thing that made you do service.
Some adventure camp.
Yeah, like service camping. You had to learn some sort of instrument and you had to do some sort of like craft or give back kind of a thing. And you fulfilled all of this and then you had medals.
Okay, then. Moving on swiftly from that. Somebody wants to just first throw all the masks in the air. So as a graduation hoga na puri desh mein log aayenge, yeah! I can't wait.
That's so sweet though.
Very nice image.
I feel the frustration of the mask. So my poor ears. You know, I'm talking about my ovaries all the
Guys,
time.
I feel like we're going to evolve. My ears are having a rough time.
They've been carrying a lot.
Can we discuss them?
Of weight.
Yeah. So my mom told me an exercise that day, which is to release all kinds of like toxins from your body. You have to press like the top of your ear here, this inner canal area, not inner, outer. Basically at this part, which you can't see right now, but I'll put a tutorial. And bus, take care of your ears. I do feel better. Honestly, it does make you feel better. You try it.
Right. That thing you told me yesterday about tapping on my chest to reduce my anxiety, it didn't help.
Ayushi, you need to do it properly. You're not doing it. It's called EFT. Google it. Listeners also who have tried EFT, please write to Ayushi and tell her it fucking works.
But don't say it like that. I feel like the whole point of EFT is to be a little gentler.
I'm always gentle to you, with you, near you, by you, always.
You came in really aggressively yesterday.
Sorry, baby. Sorry, darling. Sorry, sweetie.
Okay.
Inko find love karna hai. Somebody wants to find love.
Wo usko bolo, tell him to DM me.
I think it's a ladies.
That's also fine.
Yeah. Watching a live theatre performance. Thank you. Me too. Would love to. Abhi tak to chal raha tha. Now again it has stopped.
Yeah.
So
comedy shows, like those gigs that we went for a fair amount, man, in 2019, I think.
But luckily in January, you all came for one gig, which I was at.
But that was also so small. And I'm not complaining.
It didn't feel like an audience only because everyone was like 10 feet away from each other. It was so weird.
And like you were clapping, but there was some awkwardness. And also I think like you guys couldn't see our faces because the mask was on. So you weren't able to really judge whether a joke had landed or not. Because sometimes people don't ha with every joke. Yeah. But sometimes the physicality on the face kind of tells you whether you've done well or not. But anyway, it didn't feel the same.
Yeah. Travel, more travel, off to Bali, go to Bali, trip to Banaras, travel to Ladakh, plan a trip with my gang. Honestly, even we are trying this. This is on our wish list also, Ayushi and my personal wish list.
Yeah, with a group of friends, we're trying to plan a trip. We don't know.
I think main themes are travel, dates, going back to real life lectures. A couple of people have also said sex. So maybe that's something we address also. The lack of touch, which maybe a lot of people have experienced in the last year.
Well, yeah, also because, there was already level of caution that you should, or maybe people were approaching sex with. Like, of course, there's a little level of, like hygiene, safety, all of that stuff. And now you've added this thing of like, here's yet another potential thing I could get from someone.
Only hooking up with people who have antibodies, by the way. I think that should be your criteria.
Show me your antibody
report dikhaiye. Okay, then I can work with it.
These are all valid things to put on your wish list because I think they're on all of ours. Like, I would say every single thing that you've listed is basically on mine as well, other than lectures. But yeah, for me, it would be like going back to full-time work, meeting clients in person.
Going to the studio to record this with you.
That.
One major on my wish list.
Yeah. And I'm not going to lie, that wish list is also because there's a part of me that just doesn't want to, like there's tech exhaustion, right? That everyone is also feeling like I don't want to be so dependent on so much setup and so much, not just for this, but in general. Like yesterday when we had that audit all day, all I was doing was trying to like make sure you screen share on this thing, then pull this up, then put this together and put this here. And you're like, oh my God, if I was just in front of you, I would be able to do this so much more smoothly than it is going right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what's on your personal wish list other than this stuff? Like, concerts, gigs, concerts. That's a big one on mine.
Of course, that's also there. Yeah. all of these live events, flea markets and things like that also, no?
I also feel like eating, for me, as someone who does a lot of stop and grab,
it's become tough.
Yeah, because I don't do it anymore. Like
Same. I would love to stop and get a sandwich from the road, but I know.
Yeah,
can't.
Exactly. And there's a part of me that's like, oh, come on, Ayushi, like, it's food, it's heated, like that. And then, but the other part's like, yeah, but how do you justify these things? And if you're justifying this, and it's a slippery slope.
I had ganna juice that day and I was shaking. I was like, should I not? It was so hot that I was like, I just need it. And Nariyal pani also on the road that day. I was like, should I not? Again, I'll repeat myself, but I drank.
I had one bad thing that I did, which I'll admit, is I had sev puri. No, I had sev puri.
Ouch, Ayushi, that's like hard, but it's like same as ganna juice, hard level. So you're both fucked.
There was a ganna juice next to the sev puri guy. So
hepatitis hona tha, COVID hona tha, to ab tak ho jata. We are safe.
But it was a while back. My brother and I were near Fab India.
Guts.
Like, getting some stuff from Kala Goda. And I was like, you know what? It's been over a year and I have not had this guy sev puri. And something just came over me like a bhoot. Just took over me like, it's sev puri. And like, I had an out-of-body experience. I was like, what are you doing? Are you insane? I was like, I think I am. All I can smell is the sev puri, and while I'm admitting it, I suppose I should say I also had the sandwich next to it.
Ayushi reveals in spurts. I have noticed this about her. She's done this to me before also. Pehle ek choti cheez batayegi, fir she'll gauge your reaction. Is she okay with it? Should I tell the other part also? And then she'll come up with the next one. Like, maine ye bhi kiya, ye bhi lo info.
I'm so sorry.
Who are you? You weirdo. I just love you so much, you freak of nature.
Because it comes down to that first thing of, let me gauge how this is going to land. If you had, if you had flown off the handle that I had the sev puri, then I'm not going to tell you about the sandwich. But you told me about the ganna juice. So I felt like you also are unsafe.
You should also board the train to adulthood by subscribing to the podcast on the IVM Podcast app, website, and all other audio platforms. So last year at IVM, we got acquired by Pratilipi, an online multilingual content sharing platform. On our tech show, Shunya One, Shiladitya Mukhopadhyaya and myself were joined by Shally Modi, co-founder and product head at Pratilipi. She tells us the story of Pratilipi and its evolution so far, some surprising statistics, the scope of innovations in such a space, and her own non-typical background.
What were the metrics that you all saw which sort of showed you that this is like a very interesting, viable opportunity? Because it's an uncommon one. Let me say this 2013 or 2014 is the internet boom sort of was just starting to happen in India. It's still early days, I would say. So what did you see? What was that unique thing you saw back then?
So to be honest, this pitch deck, as in when Ranjit had shared this idea with us, we never, let me speak about myself. So I never focused on numbers, to be honest. The reason why I prioritized this over my current job and whatever career trajectory I was looking for myself was essentially around the type of people I had met that day when we were discussing this idea. So I was convinced that I would like to work with this set of people. And that was my first incentive to work and join the startup, even if it doesn't work out. Because I wasn't that well aware with what the question you asked, to be honest, right? We were aware at that time that this is the offline publishing industry and this much to potential to unlock when we are bringing content digital. There is a dearth of native language content. So all of this, and to be honest, at that time in Hindi Samay was the biggest website. Web Dunia was the biggest website, right? So we used to see that people used to go there and consume Hindi content. But yeah, the preliminary incentive for me was to work with like-minded people, people who challenge us on our day-to-day basis. And I'll learn and I'll grow more here than probably whatever opportunities I had at that time. Even if I'm not drawing any salary for years together, I'll probably would like to work with this set of people. So that was the preliminary incentive. And yeah, I wasn't very clear, to be honest, and being very modest, I wasn't very well aware what I was getting into at that time. So much of content clarity we have right these days that even smaller startups who are just beginning in their journey, they are having so much of clarity of what they are building, what is STEM, and all of that. They have actually what is the total addressable audience of this particular problem statement and how they are going to monetize that audience. So that much of clarity I did not have back then. I just figured out, okay, these are the 3-4 people I would like to work with, and I'll just learn on the way.
That's amazing, actually. And that shows to the quality of folks you're actually talking about here, of course. It's very much that it's amazing that this group of people got together and you obviously along with them and built out this platform. But from those early days to now, how was the trajectory? Like, did you see, since maybe you all were the first or unique in a lot of ways to start, but like you said, the space was uncharted, so to speak. So was it like how long into the journey were there moments where you felt that, oh, I really will not get a salary for a few years? Or was it or did you see very early on that, oh, there is something here?
This question is really on the point. So I would like to tell you one incident. So early days we were hustling for, so Ranjit primarily had borrowed some funds from friends and family, and we were applying in a lot of competitions here and there to get us going. So we would probably win somewhere in some sort of pitch deck sort of events where demo day would happen and you'll get a check of 5 lakhs, right? So one of such event was happening in IIM Kolkata, and we were there and we were pitching, and like every single investor who was sitting in the jury, they evaluated, and this is, I'm talking about, I think 2014 and or first quarter of 2015 when we had just begun. Right. And they were like, this is a fantastic idea. This is an awesome space to explore. Nobody at that time ever talked about content, like literally nobody. Right. So and Indian languages was like, if you literally search for or you browse for Indian language startup, there would be hardly probably you'll be able to count on. Right. So that time the jury basically unanimously came up with the opinion saying, yeah, we loved the hustle, we loved the rigor. You guys are coming the clarity of thoughts, but don't you think this is something how you are going to monetize, and this is a lot of a charity thing that you are doing and not something which you on top of you can monetize and make revenue? We are not yet there, so I'm not bragging about that, but still, we have come a long way from those and these are the investors who are probably investing now in connect startup, probably very early stage startups as well, right? So have seen that trajectory, that sort of evolution in thought process in the investment side as well as startups. Now I have seen even people who are sitting on a table discussing about what are the ideas we can explore in Indian languages, right? Wow. So how we can fill the gap for next 1 billion Janta, and what problem we can solve for them and can actually bring something in action. So have been there. So at that time food tech was on boom. Right. So everybody was behind that. Like every single person was into food delivery. Right. And we were just sitting here. We had no clue. So and our journey of very first investment we had in our bank, that even that part was also very different from the way people are currently pitching and they get the money there. Even at the same traction was not the same story. Right. So was a hustle. But the journey was like, now at least we are happy that people have realized that there are bigger problems to solve. Like really happy about understanding that maturity is there in the VC front, in the investment side, where people are now looking into it like, okay, this is the entire segment. And that basically happened after Jioka Big Bang launch in 2015. So, but I still remember a day when we had a talk. Ranjit had a word with someone very big in the industry, and that person had said that you will never cross more than 10,000 titles. There are no, like you are overestimating your supply side. There are hardly more than 10,000 titles you'll be able to onboard. And
do you want to throw some numbers out in terms of what those numbers actually are now?
Correct. So we have like on an average 3.5 lakh contents getting published on our platform every month. And monthly active users are around 35,000-40,000, and more than 4 lakh writers are writing on Pratilipi at this point. So at least we were confident that no, this is and that was the person whom we were like, you are basically influenced by, you look up to, right? You look up to their opinions, advice, and then sort of, okay, fine, even if we are not drawing salary, this is definitely something worth solving.
I think that's become the norm, that if an investor says no, that means you definitely have something.
Shally, one thing which I find really interesting, right, is, I mean, like you spoke a little bit about the Pratilipi journey, and we can probably come back to that. I find it really interesting of what kind of roles you've taken on in the company internally over the years, right? Can you speak a little bit about that? Because I find that really fascinating how you moved around in different areas and bringing something like that.
So the roadmap. So I'm a medical science student. Had there been no Pratilipi, I would have been pursuing my postdoc in structural biology or biophysics. So that was my roadmap back then in 2010, 2012, and since I started in Pratilipi, as I told you earlier, right, that I was quite convinced that writers are going to get benefited a huge time. And so I started off with the supply side. So to start off with, in 2014, I basically worked on Hindi, Gujarati, and Marathi language. Just try to convince those early 100 to 100 writers, make them understand that what we are bringing for them. And so, the very first question was that why would they even publish their content on Pratilipi? Because whatever they were writing currently at that time is fetching them good enough audience. And we definitely were not going to bring them more audience in the very beginning. But we were sure that once we have reached the critical mass, the cross-network visibility is going to give them miraculously high audience than what they were expecting at that time from whatever media. So mostly writers were writing on blogs. They were writing on WordPress and mostly on Facebook. And if they are very lucky and they have explored the network for a long time, then they had a chance to get published in some newspapers and magazines. So started off with that, tried out that role. So basically, it was not my choice that I wanted to work on something. Every time it was more like whatever is needed to be done, you are just needed there. You just hustle there. You just try to bridge the gap. Meanwhile, you do not have a right people who can take over that. And then once you have figured out, okay, this is a better person, subject level expertise as well as the execution part is better than yours, then you just come out of it, right? And then you pick up some other problems. So that has literally been my trajectory in Pratilipi. So first year was with languages and operations, 1.5 year. Launched around 6-7 languages. And as and when the language matures, you have 200-300 people. It becomes a lot more processes comes starting into the picture, right? And I was not very good with once. I am very much 0 to 1 person then of maintaining, improvising on the process. And that's where, Shankar so Shankar is also one of the co-founders and he took over the languages and operations. We have Jitesh, who's also still with us. Both of them, we are lucky that they are still, doing the marvelous job. Then part of the journey I spent with design team. At that time, we had 0 in-house designers. So learned a couple of tools here and there. Took help of Gaurav Mathur, also one of our very early investor at that time. I know I used to ask him very silly questions because every time I'm picking up something which is very foreign to me. I had 0 idea, very alien to me. And then, you are starting from scratch. Then worked for design, then worked for new initiatives and marketing, then works for collaboration. And then last 1.5 year, 2 years, I'm working in product and tech. So that has been my journey.
Catch the full episode on the IVM app, website, or your favorite podcasting app. We hope you like what you heard. Explore our websites, www.ivmpodcast.com, for more amazing shows. And don't forget to follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. That's all, folks. Have a great week ahead and stay safe.
Rukus Avenue Radio.
Come learn and experience the ABCDs of being queer with me, Shunetro.
And me, Farhad.
On our show, Gay BCD.
The two of us take you through our stories and experiences of being gay men in the city of Mumbai and have candid
and sometimes downright scandalous
conversations about sexuality, gay culture, and everything in between.
Catch new episodes of Gay BCD every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get all your podcasts from.
IVM.